Hello, everyone. Hello. Is my voice loud enough, everyone? Okay. So today's video is about the violin vibrato. Of course, it's not for complete beginners. Um, yeah, first I want to greet everybody who made it on time. So hello there, Anne, Carl, Rhoda, my brother, Randall, Ralph, and who else? Yeah, they will be here soon. Okay, so while waiting for them, just a brief discussion about vibrato. So vibrato, as I've told you before in the previous sessions or live stream, it's not really for beginners, and I don't recommend beginners, complete beginners, to practice vibrato right away because you need to have your fingers mature, and of course they have to get stronger. Even if you're of age, an adult, it's you cannot say for sure that your fingers are that strong already. Because normally, when we do chores, when we do something, your individual fingers are not doing anything at all. They all work as a group. So when you hold something, when you try to grab something, you would always have to use both hands, or even if it's just one hand. When you grab something, you hold it with all the fingers, and actually also with the thumb. Or if you grab your instrument, all four fingers in the thumb would have to grab at the same time. But then, in a skill, especially violin or string instrument, you have to train your fingers one by one. So it will require a bit of practice and time for each finger to mature when you practice. Also, when you're not that ready yet, the problem would be the fingers would just simply slide off of the right pitch. So if you're a complete beginner and your fingers aren't strong yet, when you start vibrating, it will move and slide backwards or forward. It won't be that stable yet. So it's not advisable yet. So if you have knowledge already about violin playing but still a beginner, most probably you can already start practicing vibrato, but with caution. You have to be very cautious when you practice. Okay, and another thing, I actually recommend doing vibrato when you're actually an intermediate already, because that's for sure that your intonation and the strength of your fingers and the whole arm, the hand, would be sufficient already to be able to sustain the pressure you're going to apply as you move or as you shake your hand. So, for example, if you're going to shift or to shake, um, during my practice back in college, I had to do it slowly. So I just need to put my finger down and then backwards. So the sounding point, or where you're sure about their intonation, it has to be the right pitch there. So you never move forward, you never slide forward, nor shake the finger forward because it will go a bit higher, meaning it's not going to be in tune. So the proper way of doing vibrato is you'll have to have the fingers collapse backwards. So here and then back. here, and then back. Second finger, the same. Sounding point, the right intonation, and then back, and then back. So this should collapse the joint here, would straighten, but it should not lock. So it will just collapse backwards, and then back. There and here. Okay. Yeah, so before I continue doing the exercises for the vibrato, a lot of students here are actually mostly beginners. So just a quick review of how to execute the exercises I've given you before, subject number 11, and of course the posture. So let me just fix this. Okay, so first the posture. I'll move backwards a little bit. Hopefully you can still hear me. So, as I've told you before, the violin should be parallel to the ground or the floor. So your nose, your eyes, and the left toes point to the same direction of the scroll. And they should be parallel to the ground, to the floor. There. Never lift the shoulder up and lift the shoulders. So both shoulders down. Just look there. If you're not using a shoulder rest, although I recommend you have to use a shoulder rest, just put a towel or dishwashing sponge. Maybe you can fasten it with a rubber band. So this is how you do it. Fasten. Flip it with your chin. And then just move to the side. Move to the side. See that? Don't lift the shoulder. Don't raise it up. So drop the weight. So here, and then I have to show you how my legs also, my stance actually. So the stance, my stance should be like this. One step forward for the left leg or the left foot. Never like this, because when you're playing for quite a time, your knees might get too tired. You might collapse. So just walk just a little bit forward, left leg, and then pointing towards the direction of the toes. Yeah. I'm going to put back this for easier visibility. So there. Okay. Next. So now the moving arm. So when you're crossing from one string to another, you have to start when you practice on the G string. So raise it up here, 90 degrees. So middle of the bow, so middle bow, and then slowly swing downwards to cross the E string. That will be the position of your elbow. So almost touching your waistline there. Almost touching the waistline for E string, and then A, about 5 degrees higher, D, and G. G string is almost shoulder level, but still it has to be about 3 degrees lower, not really up here. Once you raise the elbow up, then you will be carrying the weight of your whole arm, and it will be very difficult to maneuver because you've added the weight of your arm. So normally I would tell violin beginners to just drop the weight so that the weight of the arm would be the one pulling the string. So that would be enough for the string to sound with a nice robust tonality or tones. So press it down a little bit, drop it, and it will automatically get pressed down. Okay, so that's how you gauge the height of the elbow from G down to E string. Okay, now when there are some students also, as of now, are still, they ask me how to position the fingers when they practice step check. In exercise number 1, where you're only doing the A string, fingers 1 and 2 have to be close together. So right next to each other there. So 1 is about 1 inch away from here. And the knot, so 1 inch, and then finger 2 right beside it. Yeah, because we're doing a C major scale there. No sharps, no flats at the key signature, or A minor, so no sharps, no flats. Thus, B and C have to be right next to each other. So 1 and 2. And then the 3 should be away. So 1 thumb point apart. So 1 thumb there in between. That's how you measure it if you don't have a tuner for now. There, and then if you're going to use the pinky, another thumb there. So 0, 1, 2, right next to 1, 3 apart, 4 apart. That's for number 1. And then for number 11, where you do a lot of crossings, D string, 1 inch again from the nut here, 1, and then 2, 1 thumb apart, because there's a sharp. There are 2 sharps actually. So C and F are both sharps there. So this is F, this F natural, it has to be a sharp. Therefore, 1 thumb distance apart. And then A string, the same. 1 thumb distance apart, because this is C natural, becomes C sharp. That's your key signature. F sharp and C sharp. So 0, 1, 2. Of course, when this is already half step higher, the third finger would have to be put right next to the second finger here also. So in exercise 11, this is the finger position. Finger positioning is 0, 1, 2, right next, and then here. For number 1, 0, 1, C natural, right next there to the first, and then 3, then 4. Okay, so again, about the string crossing, this is number 11. When you cross the strings, the waves should be very minimal, so only like that. So you need to relax, and only the wrist should do the job. So how will you do that? First, you have to put the bow on top of 2 strings to know the height of the elbow, and then stay there. Fix your elbow there and just shake it with the wrist. And less waves. Okay, now there are also some students who still ask me how to practice when they're seated. So here's the chair. Okay, so hopefully you can see. So when practicing seated, don't use the backrest. Don't use that. Okay, don't relax too much, or else you won't be able to protect the sound beat. So only sit halfway or closer to the edge here, with your spine pointing upwards. And straighten your back. But actually, you can lean back a little bit for your spine to for the support. of the spine. You need to support your spine. And then, if you can see, my stance is like this. Open, the knees should not be close together. You have to open it. And then the toes again, pointing there and here. Just crawl and all. When you practice, there should be a space between your body and the elbow so that you can play around going up and down. Because some of you are practicing like very close, like this slouching and all. You never slouch at all when you practice violin. There should be enough space for you to wave your bow or to glide the bow and back. So I always get questions where they say the bow is too long for their arm length, even if they're adults already. I would always say it's not that long. Maybe your arm is not relaxed enough. That's why you cannot really pull the bow well. So as proof, this is how I try to It could still go there. So I would need a bow this long. That means it's not impossible for you to use the entire length of the bow. And then here, and then up. Again. Okay. So, those are the basics. Of course, intonation will be your responsibility. You have to use a tuner. And then tempo, your responsibility also. You would have to use the metronome. Okay, when you practice, okay, so this is about the metronome now. When you practice, the metronome should always be heard. It should be louder than you're playing because that is going to train your brain how to really follow the right tempo. If you have a metronome, but then you're going to push your own tempo, then it's useless. Better not use a metronome at all. So when practicing, remind yourself never start practicing without a metronome when you're doing techniques and studies or etudes. In the future, when you're doing music pieces already, then perhaps you'll have more liberty about the tempo you want. But when learning techniques, you have to use a metronome. And also, intonation is very important when you're practicing scales. I discussed that before. When doing scales, you will have to place your fingers correctly. Once you get a wrong note, you have to remove it. Don't just slide it up and down. So if it's zero, it starts with zero for G. And if you placed it wrongly, it's quite flat. Don't just slide. Remove it first. And then again. If you're sure about the intonation already, connect the notes. Not slurred, but then no gaps. And so on and so forth until you can play it fast enough. And then start doing slurs. Get used to the pattern and then. So, what you've noticed there, as I play the scale, the half scale faster, I'm using less and less bow until until I use only the middle part. When it's fast already, all we need to use is this much bow or even less. If it's 1 by 1, for sure it's just about 1 or 2 millimeters long. Okay, so what else for review? Yeah, okay. Now for those who are starting to shift, when you're, wait, for the very basic one, the wrist is very important. It has to be straight here. So back of the hand, wrist, and the back of the arm should be one line. Or just slightly outwards, never like that. Never touch the part of the neck here. Never like this. But then later, when we do a little bit of practice for the vibrato, you're going to use that. But when you're playing exercises and all, except for vibrato practice, they should be slightly outwards or straight, like this or like this, like this. Never like this, still not 75 degrees or 90 degrees. Should be closer. And then space between, there should be a gap or a hole between the palm and the neck of the instrument. Yeah. Okay, and then when you begin to shift from the first to the third, this last time is part of the exercise, slide the entire arm there. Don't leave the thumb behind, not like this. See that? So when you shift, don't leave the thumb. This one. And notice also on G string, as I slide towards me, my left elbow moves also towards my front. So okay, so when you're shifting, slide the entire hand. Position the first finger and then two, and then slide again. This is Rimoli exercise. This is page 15. 1, 2, 3, 3 and 4, close together. And then when you go down, 4, 3, 2, 1, the finger there is also 2, 1, but slide down the first finger and then put the second finger. 2, 1, slide down, 2, 1. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, slide, 2, 1, slide, 2, 1. That's how you practice the shifting on all the strings. Never ever remove the pointer finger. That's your guide. And the pointer finger is the one that determines what position you're at. So if you're playing here and then you slide to this is D, I'm on A string, this is D, then this is the third position already, because normally you would put the third finger there on D. So 0, 1, 2, 3. But in place of 3, you put your 1, then that's third position. So 1, 2, 3, if you put your first finger in place of the fourth, then that's the fourth position. Now here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 1, and then 1, 2, 3. This is third position already. 3, 4, 5. If you put your first finger there in place of the third finger again, then you're at the fifth position already. So 1, 2, 3. And then from the fifth to the third finger again, seventh position, and so on and so forth. So the pointer finger determines what finger or what position you're at. Okay, so I think that's enough for the review. Now we go to we go to the lesson proper. So now, when you do vibrato, earlier I already showed you how it's done. For the more advanced ones, that's why I said you have to be a little bit more an intermediate or high beginner, meaning not complete beginner. So you have to position the wrist here. So lean it onto the shoulder of your instrument. So put it there, and then the pointer finger, this will be the third position. Pointer finger onto A, that's in place of 3. As I discussed earlier, in place of 3, you put your finger there, pointer finger. Now start shaking. The pointer finger collapses downwards, there, and then back. And slowly, this is how it's done. Of course, you'll have to do that with the second finger too. And then the third, and then the fourth. So for now, this is your support, the shoulder of the instrument. That's the support when you're practicing. So collapses. So slowly down, up, down. Don't go past the intonation point. Don't go short. Should always be where you normally would play the notes. There, that's the position, and then there's the position, then collapse down, collapse there, and then one. Hopefully you can see it. So there. If you're a little bit more advanced, you don't need to use this shoulder anymore. Move to the first position. So pointer finger F sharp, same technique. So F sharp has to be in tune, and then the joint should collapse downwards, straighten, and then back there. So for finger vibrato, it's only the finger. Although some would say there's no actually such thing as finger vibrato, it's just a soft version of the wrist vibrato. I'm actually convinced about it too. So there, and then 2. So slowly, if you want to hear the sound, this is F sharp. Quarter note values. Then you go faster, double time. Double time. And then double time. Another double time. So if you hear that the sound is so shrill, it's because of the very fine vibrato tone. Tiny movement, but then very fast. Normally, you would only apply this to piano passages, and when you're playing, let's just say classical music, classical period, not the classical per se as a collective all period music. So it has to be during the classical period. So and then, as I said earlier too, you can practice the vibrato when you're doing scale, but only when you're sure that your intonation is already precise. So I'm gonna play it on the half scale of E. So E and then F sharp, G sharp, A, and then B. So 0. Some violinists would remove their fingers, although I don't recommend. Sorry. Some practice Once you lift your fingers, you're going to use the arm and a lot of wrist. So I don't recommend. If you want to do just finger vibrato, keep your fingers onto the string. So now, for the wrist vibrato, your wrist would go back and forth. So, like this. So, exercise. The bigger version of the finger vibrato. So, same thing, slowly, so solo. But this time with the use of the wrist. So the pivot point is the wrist. Can't see it. Now that's your wrist vibrato. Okay, now the arm vibrato, of course, when you say arm vibrato, the entire arm is going to shake. So now, so as you've noticed, the sound is also getting bigger. That is more noticeable if I'm going to play it on the G string. So. If it's just wrist vibrato. Okay, so like what I've said earlier, when you're doing just finger vibrato, you really cannot play loudly because it's meant to be applied to the piano passages, to the softer ones. So you cannot do it. You try to play so loud. It will be very difficult. Now, wrist. Now, for the romantic period, you're going to use the entire arm. So. So if you notice, the sound became much bigger, much fuller, and has more body when you're using the entire arm. And then if it's just the wrist, of course, medium, and then soft vibrato. So, are there questions so far? Thank you for those who are here, even if you're not violinists. Appreciate it. So, so how do you apply now the finger vibrato? There's one example here. Just need to move the screen a little bit to the left. Okay, question. Question for Brad. Oh, what to do for those who have stiff hands, fingers because of late age learning? Yeah. Sorry. As I've said earlier, before you can really start doing the vibrato correctly, your fingers have to be strong enough. So if they're not that strong enough yet, it's difficult to really attain the fullness of the vibrato sound. So you can do a very slow practice first just by moving your fingers up and down, well slide up and down onto the fingerboard. And then this one on all strings, just to loosen this part of your arm, here to here. So back and forth. And then anchor your pointer finger there and think of doing exactly the same movement, but then anchoring the pointer there. So again, slow-mo, sliding. For flexibility, you need to relax the shoulder. So you're able to relax, slide back and forth, and then anchor the pointer finger there and try to imitate the same technique. Now your arm would automatically vibrate. It will require practice for sure, especially for the older beginners. Um, Hello, then. Okay, so there. Now, earlier I already talked about the finger vibrato. So let's hear it. Although I'm not going to play the whole thing for copyright purposes. So the first is the finger vibrato. You won't notice it easily that I'm actually doing vibrato for all the notes there, the 16th notes. With a slow-mo. Okay, I overemphasized it. I used my whole arm just for you to see what I did. There's movement there. So that part now I'm doing it's too light. So in fast moving passages, you apply only the finger vibrato so you can move fast. So your fingers can move fast. All of them vibrated. Now, when you're playing slower notes like 8 notes and half quarter notes, you can add the wrist. There, wrist. So when you're doing the runs, you shake a little bit. Just shake 1, 2, 3, 4. And then wrist vibrato. Okay, and then back to 16th notes. So finger vibrato again. Wrist vibrato. Now, when you sustain tones, normally during the romantic period, you're going to use the whole arm. So. Okay, so that part, since I want it to be really sustained and I want a maximum sound or very full sound, I had to use my entire arm. So hardware that is done on where is it? It's done on the G string. Yeah, so then you use that entire part. So when you really vibrate big, the sound would also be as fat as a cow. Well, that is why during the Romantic period they added more strings. Well, Wagnerian orchestra they added more strings and more instruments into the orchestra because they already wanted a bigger and fuller tone quality. So it goes with the vibrato also. The vibrato started going much, the wave started much getting bigger. So okay, so if you know how to combine vibrati, since it's an Italian term, Italian word. Oh, by the way, when you pronounce it, it has to be vibrato, not vibrato, because it's not an English word, so it's an Italian word. So when you know how to combine vibrati, then you'll be able to create a very nice character onto the piece you're playing. So starting from the piano early, very fine vibrato. And then the part where I started doing this part, wrist. And then this part. Plus, when you do some slides or portatos, it will add color also to the music. So now the entire arm for what part here? So here. A lot of vibrato. So you can do a slight change of the dynamic, slight dynamic change going softer. And then yes, for the vibrato, I'm gonna repeat it just a little bit later. So let me just finish this part. So connect. This part, normally you would use only the finger vibrato since they're all 16ths. So, but it's not going to work. Why? Because the dynamics here is as forte. You went to a very big crescendo. So. And if you're going to use their only finger vibrato, then listen, this will be the sound. Feels very soft. So when you're applying vibrato to your piece, to your music, you should really plan out how it will sound effectively, because there are parts where it won't work at all. So generally, you use finger vibrato when the notes are fast. 16th notes or 8 notes, you only use finger vibrato. But what if they're actually forte? If the dynamic's loud, then you'll have to change. You have to do at least wrist or perhaps even arm vibrato. So again, it goes with your maturity as a performer or as a student. Okay, so the exercises for how you can enhance. So earlier I said for beginners you can do this only. and then anchor it there. But now, when you're into the intermediate, if you're intermediate or the advanced level, what you need to do is really pin your fingers onto one scale. Let's just say C major, and then use your arm for vibrating as you play the three octave scale. So. So you move up and down using the scale with the grandest vibrato you could produce. So arm vibrato every day, and then every day, and then the following week start only using the wrist. And then this finger. Okay, here's my favorite question to answer again. How many hours a day for vibrato practice? It depends. So the maturity of every person, every individual is different from another. So when you feel that the hand is getting tired, you will have to stop first. So start if I don't know your level yet, but if you're intermediate and you're doing the scale vibrato already, start with the arm vibrato. Try to do just one scale, just one three octave scale up and back. If you get tired right away, then there must be something wrong because you should be able to sustain that kind of vibrato for an hour without getting tired yet. So going back to the question about how long, I really cannot tell how long, but you will have to gauge your own maturity. I say maturity because sometimes even if we are old, the maturity is still young or baby, as I would say. So when you shake this, the left shoulder should be dropped down so that the weight would not be hindering your shaking. So here, if this is very flexible and open, you can easily play for an hour without this getting tired fast. So. But also will be able to play songs or pieces that require like intense sound, like okay, so if you combine now vibrato, different kinds of vibrati, and dynamics, you would produce a very intense sound. That's why I keep on telling it goes with your maturity. So vibrato does not work nicely if you're just shaking your hand. You don't know what you're doing, so you're just shaking. But if you combine them together with the dynamics as indicated in the music, then you might be able to create a very nice phrase, a phrase that has meaning. So it should be like a poem. Express yourself through the music you play. But if you do it, if you're applying the vibrato incorrectly, it might hinder or it's not beneficial at all, and it's going to affect your performance. So, yeah, that's always I've also heard that question. Vibrato about the I think it's more about the thinking. If you think that, like, this is like for the pianists. The pianist, when some of them I've talked to concert pianists before, that when she performs, so she's a she. When she performs, it's like she's vibrating the strings too. It's more of the psychological thing. That is actually to produce the correct emotion um, from the performer herself or himself. So if you're thinking of I'm doing vibrato with my right arm, then that goes psychological. It adds more color because even if you're not really adding it with the use of the right arm, you for sure would be adding it here with the use of the left hand. So that's a very good thinking as well when both arms are doing vibrato. But for me, I really cannot say that you're doing vibrato here because the moment you start doing vibrato, then you might reduce a tremolo. Yeah, that's just my point of view. So it's more psychological. That is to condition yourself as a performer when you play something that requires intense emotion to the music. Okay, so what else? You're welcome. Yes, yeah, I've just saw the question. So about the font. See, the font, as I discussed before on all the previous live streams, this should not hinder you from moving. So if you place it lightly here, away from the neck, then you'll have a good chances of shaking freely or vibrating freely. But the moment you put it here, then you're locking your chance of having a very open vibrato because it's already locked. And all the more if you're applying pressure. Once there's pressure here, forget it. You won't be able to learn vibrato nor shift it. So remember, the thumb should be placed lightly onto the neck, to the side. It can be just, it could be a bit higher, sorry. If your thumb's long, doesn't matter whether it's protruding outwards or if it's hidden. If it's upwards or hidden, as long as there's a little bit of a gap between the palm and the neck of the instrument. So here or there. Actually, I did exercises before where I don't actually hold the neck with the thumb. Okay, because the thumb is actually just there to make things difficult if you don't know how to position it. So position it lightly there, anchor it there, no pressure at all, and start shaking nicely. Okay, you'll have to remember that everything you do with the left, with both arms, there should be coordination, and you should be able to explain why it has to move that way, or why do they have to move that way. So here, why do you need to collapse your fingers moving away from you? Back. Because the moment it goes forward, the sound goes a little bit sharp. And our brains will not accept that. The right movement is going backwards because what is pleasant to human brain is when the tones get a little bit lower and back to their original point. or the right pitch. So it's not or else it would sound like the sound of a ghost in movies. So shouldn't be. So another exercise I learned from one of my colleagues back in the orchestra when I was still active there. Is the imitation of the sound of a ghost, but not going sharp. This is what you will do. Okay. It's like doing chromatic scale, going up and then back, up. That will strengthen your arm, your wrist, and your fingers too. So that is the variation of this, just the plain sliding. Since you're practicing vibrato now, shake it. Back. So, there. Then you'll get stronger. One more hand, raise up with your arm, finger, and crossing fingers. Play together. Okay. Sorry. So if done slowly, look at the sorry. So here, for the finger vibrato, how would you coordinate the movement? Yeah, for the finger vibrato, there's still a hand movement there. You cannot separate that. So slowly, oh, I cannot see. So there. But when you do it fast, it seems like only the fingers moving. So, but still going back and forth. The sounding point, when I say sounding point, that's the right pitch, and then back. Just with the finger, and then here, and then there. Now for the wrist, like this. Okay, this is the movement without the violin, but then, as you can see, the fingers moving forward and backward. That is why you will have to anchor it onto the correct pitch. Once you anchor it there, then you'll have this kind of movement. Slowly, slowly. And then the movement also of the finger is not going sideways. It's like this. Forward and backward. It's like that. Forward, point, the sounding point, and then backwards, not forward, and then back, not sideways. You never do sideways when you vibrate, so here. So there. Then here. Now for the arm, when you collapse down, that's the movement of the arm and back. There. Arm, wrist, and finger. Okay, hopefully I answered the question. Um, yeah, I don't get the part here where it said, but played together. They got confused. Okay, so you're just wanting exercise, I guess. So there's so many exercises already. One is just sliding for the complete beginners, this one, and then the slow finger with the wrist and with the whole arm movement. Slowly, you have to do this using a metronome, 6 to 60 beats per minute, and then quarter note, quarter, 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 eight, 16th, and then 30-second. That's when you'll get the correct vibrato sound. And then, of course, for all the types. Now, the quarter, 8, 16th, and then 30-second. Now, finger. You should see. And then, going faster. Yeah. So a finger vibrato is always finer because you're only using this part, only the fingers. That's why you can do a back and forth movement way faster than when it's with the wrist or with the arm. So finger very fast, and then here slightly bigger, and then of course there. And then what else? Mm. Uh, yeah, so there are so many exercises, but then you will have to pick the one that works for you. There are also some who would actually just do this, collapsing, and some would have like a board. Let's just say this is the board, and then just doing that together with the thumb there. But the problem with the thumb, the moment you start using the thumb as well, it might hinder in the future for when you want to play fast, because this is you will be applying pressure into the neck of the instrument. So I recommend, because I don't know what school of thought the other teachers are from. I only recommend practicing this and move away using the thumb, because it might hinder you in the future when you're doing some runs or a lot of ups and downs from the first to the higher positions and back. So that's my stand there. And then okay, so what else? I don't really recommend um, using the thumb together with any of the fingers, but if it works for you, fine. So there's so many exercises where it only involves the fingers and the hand, because you're moving away from the use of the thumb when you're going a lot of positions up, when you want to go up there and back, because it will hinder, that's for sure. And are there any other questions? So again, so now, like let's say earlier I played a part in, if I'm going to use my thumb there, it will be very difficult. Then so wait, this should not hinder when you want to shift. Now, if you're going to use that a lot, then though make sure that it's away from it's getting out of the way when you shift. So this part now. will be very difficult to go up there if you when you practice it together with the other finger because you're going to apply pressure. So okay, so what else? And then yeah, there are also part where, well, for this piece, it ends with a very pianissimo sound. Then you're going to use again the finger vibrato on it. Since that's very short too, like this. Okay, so. Okay, so what else? We have time for other questions. So finger vibrato again. When you're playing fast pieces or passages, you can easily apply the finger vibrato. So for practice also, Rimoli or Saftig. Practice finger vibrato there. I don't know if you could see that I'm actually vibrating the notes there. But only with fingers. Now, if it's slower, even slower than one vibrato. So when you want to play Mozart pieces, you may apply the finger vibrato. But if you're playing Baroque pieces, I saw one video before where a violinist played too much vibrato. I'm not a fan of vibrato when you're playing Baroque pieces, and so there's a video about it. Too much. So most probably, if you want to add vibrato to that piece, only finger vibrato. But if you can avoid. So finger only. So it doesn't hinder to the character of the piece. So other pieces where you require a lot of vibrato, when you're doing romantic pieces. So welcome. So there are a lot of romantic pieces. When I say romantic pieces, by the way, it's about the period. It's not about the mood of the music. It's not like the popular piece that we know which are romantic, but yeah, they don't belong to a romantic period. So when I say classical, it's about the period. It's not generally the entire collection of all period music. So Baroque, of course, before classical period. So, another thing, when you're playing double stops, normally add a little bit of vibrato even when you're doing the baroque pieces. Just slight movement, maybe just one shake. This is to have a spice to the two tones that are sounding together, or else it would sound boring. But if you do, it will add a little bit of flavor. And of course, there are pieces also which contain like accent signs, but they don't mean actually you put an accent with the right arm. So when there's an accent, for example, this part of the piece. Oh, by the way, I've been playing the Waltzing Doll by Edward Puccini. So there's a part here where it says. If there's a, if there's an accent there, you're not going to put, but then a big sound coming from the arm. So it's a left hand accent. So okay. But it will also again require maturity when you play accent as vibrato or vibrato as an accent. So a sudden shaking there. Oh, that is more left or the vibrato accent. We call it left hand accent there. So less here. The movement of the bow is only, but then the movement here is. So there are parts there where so if you're not mature enough, you won't be able to differentiate the difference between a left hand accent and a right arm accent. So again, you will have to practice a lot of techniques. And then another part here. Yeah, so and then here there are dots. So and then there's a little bit of crescendo. So again, you will change the vibrato technique there from finger from the piano. It's a very funny way to arm vibrato, and then yeah. So, are there more questions so far? We have a lot of time. So, okay, so what else? Let me read backwards. I might have missed some questions. Oh, yeah, I missed one question here. If it's okay to post. Yeah, you may post your vibrato practice, but only if you're not a complete beginner. Because you know my stand in that you have to be a little bit more mature already when it comes to intonation and technique, left hand technique. Because once you start practicing vibrato, it will hinder your intonation and the enhancement or the agility of your fingers. So make sure that your fingers are agile already and you have to achieve the right level of intonation. Well, understanding of intonation. What I mean about understanding of intonation is your brain could easily tell if you're in tune or not. What else? I might have this more. Huh? Uh, how this information of, oh, okay, I think I missed this one. How to sync the motion of bowing right hand versus collapsing fingers of the left hand. Yeah. So again, um, that's one reason why you should be a little bit more advanced when you start doing vibrato. Because this should not be hindered. Like, for example, you're doing only one long bowing. This should not be hindered the moment you start shaking your fingers here. And same reason why I always train the right arm first, because the moment you start doing more advanced techniques like vibrato and left hand pizzicatos and all, this should be trained already, because your attention would be more to the left side already once you start doing more advanced techniques. So it is advisable that you really work on your right arm first. It's the only way, I would say, well, for me, yeah, my point of view, you have to work on this one first. Once it's doing fine, good, and you think you could manage other more advanced techniques, then you can focus your attention here. But then the right arm should have acquired the involuntary techniques there already. So the brain should have memorized how the arm moves, the right arm moves, even if you're not paying attention to it. So it should come as natural already. That when you're doing a down bow, especially when it's very slow, it would not be changing. Even if you are moving the left hand fast and lots of vibrato, this should not hinder the movement of the right arm. Okay, so, oh, who has birthday? Oh, happy birthday, Ben. I just saw the message. Okay, in one. Okay, so in one bow stroke, it doesn't matter how many vibrato you can add. Yeah, sustain the bow as much as you can. That will work better. So maybe as low as this. Then. And keep in mind that when you practice vibrato, you have to turn on your metronome so that you would really measure and your vibrato in the future will be really controlled. Because there are a lot of, I would say about 95% of students, when they're practicing vibrato, they cannot control afterwards. So once they've learned the technique, they really cannot control that, even if the teacher asks them not to do vibrato at the end of maybe a scale or a piece, they suddenly just shake. So that you should avoid that, because it will be very difficult to interpret a piece in the future, because your hand has a brain of its own. So that will only be cured when you use a metronome at the very start. So metronome. So if you notice, the speed that I applied was actually uniform. Only the speed here, well, not the speed, but then the note values are changing. So again, this is separated from this. So you should be able to synchronize both of them because yeah, I did a lot of exercises when I was a student with my right arm. So that well, my teacher asked me to do so that when I had learned the other techniques here, this was not hindering the more advanced techniques of my left hand. Um, Yeah, again, it depends how many times you would do a down and up bow. So what you would have to focus on is how to loosen the movement here. Because this should be you're doing it automatically, the downs and ups. I suggest slow tempo so that you can just mind the movement here. So use your ears. If there's a foreign sound, like something like that, then most probably you went too fast or too slow. So you have to be mindful about the sound all the time. So always listen. You can apply vibrato on scales and also double stops for those who are a little bit more advanced. So so up to you. You can explore where you can apply the vibrato technique that you want. Or even from the past lesson of doing octaves. Are there more questions? Yeah, you should not just get fixed onto the exercises that probably your teacher told you how to do it and all. You as a student, even if you're adult, you should explore outside the box. That's what I did when I was a student. I would always have to look for other ways how to make the problems, how to solve the problems, and how to make the how to do the task much easier and faster. So when you're asked, for example, to do a lot of vibratos on one string, maybe you could also do it on other strings already, but then, of course, focusing only on one string at a time. So, for example, G string, if you were asked to do the vibrato there, once you got it, go to the other string or start moving up to other positions. So, you can also do the one octave scale. Going up. So that is like shooting two birds in one stone. So you're doing scale at the same time practicing your vibrato. Well, actually 3 points because you're already doing a lot of positioning there, higher positions. So that's actually favorite scale before only one octave scale. So I practice one octave. And then exactly the same technique. I apply it to other points where I just drop my finger and then that's my starting point. That will be the tonic or the do. Excuse me again. Then I'll play the scale. And then with vibrato. So you can add different bone strokes, different variations. So you will be adding more difficulty, but then more control to both, control of the right and the left arms. So you can also go to, like, for example, if you go here, and then, yeah, it's yes, natural reflexes. I've seen that to like most of the beginners when they're practicing vibrato, or actually when they're playing pieces like hmm, what piece was this? You can see some who are actually vibrating up in the air because of the natural reflex. Um, if you cannot control the vibrato, then there must be something wrong you did, or maybe you did not use a metronome, or you're not conscious of what your right arm is doing. So you're just letting it go by itself. That's not good, because the interpretation would be a little bit different than what you have in mind or what you want your audience to hear, because they're not totally in control of the left hand. That is why it's very important to consciously practice your vibrato. You can always say stop to your hand if you don't want it shaking, or every end of the piece, maybe you don't want to put a vibrato, you should be able to say stop, even if you're not looking. It's not a good habit to always doing vibrato. Sometimes if I ask my student to practice scale, and then I say no vibrato, all of a sudden there's a point where he or she's having difficulties with, for example, a wrong note, all of a sudden vibrates. So it becomes like a shield to hide the wrong note that he or she played, and that's not good, because that will manifest in the piece, in your piece in the future. So you have to be mindful at all times what the left hand is doing. What else? Other more questions? Uh, yes, bottom line should be able to control the shaking. It shouldn't be like an epileptic where you're just shaking and shaking. Um, oh, yeah. What's that? Uh, yeah, so there's when I first take lessons from my first teacher, it was taught to me, but I already knew there will be problems. So I don't know what was taught or how it was taught, but then if your former teacher did not explain why you need to or you don't need to vibrate a note or a phrase, then there would really be a problem. Because when you're playing a piece, it doesn't mean that you're going to apply vibrato on all the notes. Even if the piece is a slow piece, you'll have to consider the period of time when it was composed, and also how you would interpret it yourself. Because some pieces would require very little vibrato. Well, you know already earlier pieces up to Baroque, and then what else? Yes, an effect to the sound of the vibrato. Let's say, for example, I over tighten my bow. Please don't snap. It will feel different because the bow if it's too tight, the bow wants to jump off the string. It will be more difficult and it will sound more airy. If you try to push it harder, it will sound so scratchy also. So you have to be mindful also of the thought of your bow. Too tight would repel you would be battling with the thought of the bow. You'll be applying a lot of pressure, but it will result to scratchy sound. There's this screechiness, so you have to be mindful of it. So the right thought for the bow is even if you apply a little pressure, it will still sound like the sound of flexibility. I don't know how to say that. It should sound more open. It should sound open. Yeah. Yeah. So it should sound not forced at all. If you play loudly, so because if it's tight, like how I did earlier, it will sound so scratchy already. So avoid over tightening your bow. It is actually better if it's on the loose side, but of course not recommended also. Not recommendable. So always make sure that the thought of the bow is correct. Well, you can tell in the future. If you're just a beginner, it will take quite a time for you to really master how the sound is produced when the thought TAUT of the bow is this much or this less. So you have to explore. You will you will mature faster if you're the person who explores a lot. So practice applying a lot of pressure and then also less. Like when you try practicing here, will it work if you add a lot of pressure or if there's actually less pressure? You yourself could tell the difference. So if you explore more, you'll learn faster. For beginners. And then for those who are not so beginners already, vibrato. Different intensities. So automatically, when the piece has a lot of dynamic markings, soft, going loud and all, you will interchange from finger to wrist to arm, or a combination of wrist and finger. I mostly use the combination of wrist and finger when I vibrate it. Less on vibrato, only when it's needed, because it's too forceful and I don't like the sound too when it's too much. So what else? Hmm. Are there more questions? Yeah, I guess you know now the reason why I don't recommend doing vibrato for beginners because it's going to confuse you a lot. Because vibrato itself has three variations. For some, well, for many, they would only say wrist and arm. But when you try to add vibrato on fast-moving phrases, for sure there's a little bit of finger vibrato. You will never apply this because it's too fast. The movement of the notes were too fast for you to apply wrist vibrato. So you can only apply the finger vibrato. There. So finger, wrist, and arm. So not really for beginners. But if you can already play, let's just say minuet in G, perhaps you can start practicing vibrato. But just be mindful of the intonation and how the right arm moves. If you could master both, then you're good to really work on your vibrato. If you cannot yet, then wait a little longer. Okay. Who else has problems with the vibrato when they practice? Or maybe if you feel something is wrong, or some part of the body, some parts of your body are aching when you practice, then maybe you can ask also. Let's see if I could solve it. Yeah, what's this? Okay. So the thought of the bow is very important, even if you're not practicing the vibrato. Just the simple exercises. This is very important. It really affects your sound. Um, Especially when you're doing string crossings, when there's too much weight or too much pressure is going to be scratchy. And when the thought is too tight, even if you apply less pressure, the sound will not be correct because it will be airy but strong at the same time. So airy but strong. Yeah, hopefully you can understand the sound that it produces. But then, if it's too tight and you add more pressure, you will only produce a lot of scratches. Um, yes. What else? You're quiet now. Are there more questions? So yeah, like what I said in my post, you should be trying to practice or to do the exercises I'm telling you while watching this, so you can gauge the maturity of your both arms, of your playing, and if there are problems that you encounter right now while trying the exercise, then you can ask. If there are parts of your hand that are aching, then perhaps we could try to solve it. So, no further questions, because we can also end this earlier if there are no more questions. Hmm? Yeah, so another way you can practice vibrato is choose, if you're a little bit on the intermediate level already, choose the easy pieces you're playing and just work on adding vibrato. Try doing choosing just a few notes with vibrato, and also practice it with all notes vibrated. Because in the romantic period, mostly all the notes need to be vibrated, especially if you're playing drums. So if you're doing 16ths, you'll have to apply vibrato there. So what else? So you can apply it onto the pieces or to the studies, practice for vibrato, as well as the dynamics. So the dynamics and vibrato, they go together, actually. So you can only express a very nice dynamics, crescendo, decrescendo, with the help of vibrato. So like and vice versa with with the right vibrato for every dynamic marking, like for the you can only apply the correct arm technique for doing vibrato, else it will sound funny if you try applying, like for example, finger vibrato and a very loud piece, then it will sound like you're too cold and then your teeth are actually clattering. So you have to be careful how you use your vibrato. So when there are loud passages, might as well just use the arm or arm and wrist. And then what else? Um, yeah, be mindful also of your posture all the time. Normally, when you play pieces that require arm vibrato, you're more lean to your back, so you can project the sound. Because if you're playing like this, the movement of your arm is going to the the movement of the elbow is going to hit your body. So you have to lean a little bit there and then the violin forward, swung forward so that you can really do a hand vibrato openly. Now, if you're slouching, that would be very difficult. So posture matters also when you're playing. Same reason why when you see violinists performing up on stage, they're always standing upright with their back almost leaning more to the back. So that's actually to give room also to the vibrating arm when they're doing arm vibrato. Okay, with bad posture, you cannot execute a good vibrato or let's just say specifically arm vibrato. Bad posture, not good for this, not good for the back also. So, yeah. What else? Posture, yeah, intonation, of course. So always practice your intonation before applying vibrato. So for intermediate and advanced, you begin playing the scale first, where you're going to apply the vibrato in the future or later on with slow tempo, get the pitches correctly, and once the fingers are ready to vibrate, that's the only time you're going to apply the vibrato. Always begin without any vibrato at all. That's why in subject, never put vibrato because that's the very first book that I ask my students to work on when they practice or when you practice. So subject, no vibrato, and then scale, no vibrato, and you can start adding your vibrato if you're a little bit on the advanced side or intermediate. And then, of course, when you're doing pieces already or the etchings, studies, that's when you're going to apply everything. Vibrato, dynamics, and all. So studies are those the books, for example, are the Kaiser, um, Wolfhard, those Kreutzer, those books. Those are studies where you should perform them like a music piece. Okay, so I think I'm talking a lot already. Are there any more questions? So no more questions. Um, that would be it for today, I guess. So you're so quiet now. Okay, so I think we'll have to end this session for today. And next week, I might talk on the facility of the right wrist because still a lot of the students are having a hard time how to control the wrist when they play exercises and pieces. I see a lot doing this and naturally, and a lot also doing too tight. So that has to be explained next time how it's done properly. Uh, so no more questions. So thank you for staying there. Hopefully you learned something. If there are some parts which are not very clear, you can just review and then perhaps next session you can ask your questions again. So normally when I watch master classes and all, I have a paper and pencil with me. I write down what I don't understand and try to explore before I ask questions. Uh, You're welcome. Yes, so I guess that's it for today. So I will see you next week. Have a nice evening, Philippines, and the other side of the world. Well, good afternoon, perhaps, and or even good morning. So that's all for today. Bye bye.